broadcasting from the Unshackled Studios in Melbourne. This is WilmsFront, brought to you by theunshackled.net. Now here's Tim Wilms.
Hello and welcome to the midweek edition of WilmsFront. The date is Wednesday, the 12th of August, 2020. We are live on the WilmsFront YouTube and DLive channels and also on the Entropy Enhanced software interface. I've put the link into the chats, or you can ask a question of myself or my guest tonight. You can send through a super chat or participate in the poll, which is which lockdown stage will Victoria be at when September ends? Will it be stage 2, 3, 4, or 5? It's anyone's guess at the moment. Though the reality of this latest stage 4 lockdown is starting to sink in to more and more Melburnians, which includes the curfew from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m, the permitted worker scheme, and then last week there was the confusion and anxiety about which industries had to shut, plus increasing examples of aggressive police enforcement of the state of disaster. During the past week, we witnessed a flip in the media and the Victorian populace, who are now focusing on the costs of these lockdowns in terms of our freedoms, human welfare, mental health, personal relationships, and of course, economic. Active case numbers in Victoria have stabilised over the past week. It was up today with 410 new cases. The daily death toll is still averaging in the high teens. It went above 20 today to 21. The vast majority of these deaths are coming from the aged care facility outbreaks, which is just tragic. Also, healthcare case numbers are also a cause for concern, but hospital, ICU and ventilator capacity are still nowhere near the max. Dan Andrews has said over the past few days that there's no magic numbers that would indicate to him when restrictions can start to be lifted. Current Victorian Treasury modelling that was released today has Victoria going from stage 4 to stage 3 in mid-September, then stage 2 after September. But of course, this is all dependent on how the case numbers and deaths play out over the next month. It's pretty much a day-by-day indication. Dan Andrews' daily press conference. Stage 4 is currently scheduled to end on September 13th. Hence, the citizens of Melbourne's lives, businesses, jobs are still in a state of limbo, along with our civil liberties and freedoms. What has made the current lockdown even more frustrating on the people of Melbourne and regional Victoria is the lack of transparency and accountability from the Andrews government. Andrews and his ministers have finally faced some scrutiny before the Victorian Parliament's Public Accounts Committee. Andrews claimed yesterday during his testimony that Australian Defence Force assistance for managing hotel quarantine wasn't actively offered to his knowledge, but this was contradicted later in the day by Federal Defence Minister Lisa Reynolds. Today, Jobs Minister Martin Pakula testified that although his department was responsible for procuring the security contracts for the hotel quarantine program, it was the Department of Health and Human Services under Health Minister Jenny Mikakos that was responsible for managing infection control. It's important to remember that this is the second lockdown that Victoria has suffered through to contain the coronavirus. Many businesses that only just survived the first stage 3 lockdown will not come back after the second lockdown, and more businesses have shut and jobs have been lost under stage 4. My guest tonight is Rukshan Fernando. He has had his life and livelihood turned upside down in 2020. He worked in the wedding industry, but under stage 4 restrictions, weddings are illegal in Melbourne. So Rukshan has been speaking out on his Facebook page and YouTube channel about the current state enforcement approach of the lockdown. Rukshan, thanks for joining me.
Hi, Tim. Thanks for having me on tonight.
Now, as I said in my introduction, I've noticed a flip in the populace and also the media in beginning to question both the effectiveness and the long-term sustainability of the lockdowns, and you're one of those people as well. So during the first lockdown in March, which ended in May, there was just the weddings could only take place with the two people getting married, the celebrant and the two witnesses. There was, of course, the initial relaxing of restrictions and reopening, but then under stage 3, July 9, it was back to 5, and now they're completely illegal now to get married. So I'll just start with, obviously, it's even more difficult the second time round for everybody to go into lockdown, especially you. But can you describe what it was like when the first lockdown was introduced and weddings were severely limited, to put it mildly?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely. I think the first lockdown, there was a sense that, especially from me as a business owner, that being such, I guess, a novel virus, and we didn't really know what was going on, that, it was crucial that we did kind of participate in that lockdown to be in a position to come out of it, still to be able to operate as a business coming out of it. So initially, I was very supportive of those types of measures, not particularly because I thought that it was a right thing to do, but I felt like we had no choice. The government was going to do it anyway. So as a business, it was a responsible thing to do to kind of comply, go along with it, and come out of the other side in a position to kind of, rebuild. And really at that point, I thought that was really the only lockdown that we were going to go through. I didn't anticipate there would be these rolling lockdowns where it would end up in a situation where going forward after this lockdown, I'm not sure if we're going to be going into another one that's even more extreme or less extreme. It doesn't kind of matter anymore because we've gotten to such a point that, it's, as a business, it's just frustrating because you can't see a way out of it. So first lockdown, I kind of did see that light at the end of the tunnel, and I would say now it's been diminished. There is no light.
I think a lot of people accepted the first lockdown because back in late March, there was still not a lot we knew about this virus, and we saw the horrific scenes of mass graves in Italy and New York. And what we were sold about our politicians sold the first lockdown to us is that we've got to flatten the curve, because we were seeing the curve just go up so dramatically that our health system could be overwhelmed. We just didn't know. It was the unknown, which also fueled the panic buying, starting with the toilet paper and to other things. And because it was a virus that was born in communist China, that also added to a certain level of uncertainty and fear as well. But since we did flatten the initial curve, we've seen mission creep to, we're told that the official approach is suppression and containing outbreaks when they occur. But it seems that, well, we didn't really have a first wave. We basically eliminated the virus. And this is the thing that particularly Andrews has been, I would say, quite despicable at, is blaming Victorians for being complacent, where, as it's been exposed, it was his government that dropped the ball on hotel quarantine and contact tracing. They've been proven to, in both of those, it's just been one round of catch up after another. And it's like, you're the ones who said, trust us to contain this virus when the curve was flat. What were you doing for 2 months before we had this outbreak again, which is now, well, it's stabilized now, but has been pretty out of control?
Yeah, sure. I mening the flattening the curve, that messaging was very intense initially, and the way I interpreted it and the way that a lot of my friends and family and other business people that I know interpreted it was to get to a situation where our hospital system could cope with what the situation was going to be where if the virus took hold in Victoria. Now, it's since moved on from flattening the curve to we need to have 0 cases for it to be like a viable situation for us to go back to normal, which is not kind of the social contract that we signed up for at the onset of this. Because were the hospitals prepared during the initial lockdown? Were they in a position to kind of handle what's happening now, or is this lockdown that we're in now them still preparing? What was the point of flattening the curve if the result of that was that when the cases actually came about, we'd have to go into a more extreme lockdown? And I think there's been a lot of people that have this same feeling, and that question hasn't really been put to the government in that way. Like, what was the point of the initial flatten the curve message if that resulted in a more extreme lockdown? Because I felt like what we did initially was really to give our hospital system, the frontline workers, and the government an opportunity to prepare for this, unprecedented event. Because initially, that's how we saw it. It was unprecedented, and we saw the scenes out of China, like you said. And I was watching that from late January into February, and back then, when people were worried about that stuff, like it's justified because there is a lot of unknowns, and you're seeing people, like you said, mass graves, people dropping dead on the street, whatever it is. It puts fear into people, and I was at that point. I was like, yes, I'm happy to support the government in this thing because it's really unknown what's going to happen. But from flattening the curve, we've gone to 0 cases, and going down that route, it's hard to see a way out of it because the messaging has been put to the people so intensely that the only way out of this is to have 0 cases, that you get to a point like New Zealand, for instance, today, they had a case or a few cases, and they've come out of 100 days without a case. They had a few cases today, and there's the introduction of some more further smaller lockdown measures. So what's the message that's been put into people's mind about what from flatten the curve to 0 cases to now it's just all over the place, I think.
Yeah, last night Jacinta Ardern had a press conference at 9 p.m. New Zealand time, and she announced from midday the next day that Auckland would be going back to level 3 lockdown and the rest of the nation level 2 lockdown. Like, at least Dan Andrews has most of the time given us a few days notice in what it's going to do. She gets up some New Zealanders might be in bed, and it's based on 4 active cases in the same family. I remember the day when Dan Andrews announced the initial 6-week stage 3 lockdown. There'd been 191 new active cases confirmed that day, which is a lot more than 4. But Jacinta Ardern, she had championed herself on eliminating the virus, and they went to stage 4 back in April, and their stage 4 was even more draconian than what we've got in Victoria, where they even shut down KFC, McDonald's, the local butcher, greengrocer, and baker. It was even more draconian than what we have here.
Yeah, I mean, I can't. For me, when I look at how the governments are reacting in Victoria, or let's say in New Zealand, it seems like there's a push to be in that league, like a club where you have 0 cases or you are kind of under control, which makes sense to a certain extent. But obviously, you have to weigh up the costs economically, especially for businesses going forward with such a system where you kind of have 100 days without a lockdown or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden you have 4 cases and bang, you're back into a lockdown. There's really no kind of way that we can see to be confident about the future, because I don't know if in 2 months time, 3 months time, we have 15, 20 cases again and everything's locked down again. It's hard to figure out what really is motivating them to do this. I understand the health aspect of it, definitely. But they're not really making a case for, how they see this going forward in an economic way.
I think what has irritated me the most is the top-down heavy approach, both a combination of a police state and a nanny state from Daniel Andrews. Don't forget, we had the strictest stage 3 lockdown initially, where even golf and fishing and paddleboarding was banned. The other two, fishing and paddleboarding, they could be done by yourself. You're completely socially distant from everybody. And during that first lockdown, Victoria Police issued the most infringements. Its snitch line went into meltdown. They did have to use the Australian Defence Force then to help take the snitch line calls, and Victoria was the last to reopen. In fact, when we did go to, well, I guess you call it stage 2, you're allowed 5 visitors from another household at your home, but still cafes, restaurants and pubs weren't allowed to have dine in. That came later as well, which, of course, that heavy-handed approach has and continues to be, because it's back again, breeds resentment. And we've seen both Daniel Andrews and Police Commissioner Shane Patton constantly issue their hectoring and threats. We might play one of your short videos from your channel now on Shane Patton talking about enforcing the stage 4 lockdown.
But people have to absolutely understand there are consequences for your actions, and if you're not doing the right thing, we will not hesitate.
He's fucking choking me! He's choking me, dude! What the fuck?
We've seen a trend, an emergence, if you like, of groups of people, small groups, but nonetheless concerning groups who classify themselves as sovereign citizens, whatever that might mean.
Police may now enter anyone's home without a warrant.
The organisers of an anti-mask rally planned for Melbourne this weekend have been arrested.
Police have smashed in a car window to arrest Eve Black.
This is 1980s Soviet Union. No, this is Melbourne now.
You do whatever you want. This is Australia. It's free. Are you serious? Are you serious? Just for not having a mask?
And he's not wearing a mask. Police will use common sense, of course.
No, that was some superb editing and overlays there by yourself. And we'll just break down that the footage in that video montage. The woman who was thrown to the ground and arrested for not wearing a mask. That was in. That was, I think it was on Tuesday, or might have been Monday, in Wellington Street in Collingwood. She apparently had a medical certificate, but apparently because she refused to show ID, that's why she was arrested. There have been other non-mask and lockdown compliers who've been arrested, but never with that type of physical force, and it's now being investigated, that arrest, by police professional standards.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a problem here in what it looks like visually, especially with the hands around the neck. Now there's a bit of talk back and forth whether he or she was being choked because she could speak and yell, but regardless of any of that, the enforcement seems very draconian and strict, especially considering if it was for not wearing a mask, as it's been stated, to grab a woman like that, to throw her on the ground. I'm sure there's many other ways of restraining someone, and there was multiple officers there as well that could have restrained her in a much different way. Whether she had to be restrained in the first place and is also an important question to ask, because she did have that exemption, and how that escalated to that point. People are on edge, like the community's on edge. Everyone is feeling a lot more on edge these days with these kind of things going on. So they are arcing up in the community sometimes, and the police have to be professional and deal with it in a manner that doesn't cause these kind of scenes and scenarios to occur. But obviously there's been some sort of, I don't know if it's lack of training or what it is, but the approach to that particular arrest is quite concerning. For me as a citizen watching that, I don't want to be on the street walking down without a mask and I say the wrong thing and the next minute the police is just slamming me on the ground because, as compliant as you may be, you may say the wrong thing. And we don't know exactly what would trigger the police to behave in that way, because I feel like they've been given that power, given that incentive, not incentive, but given that kind of mandate almost to behave in that way over something like a mask. It's quite crazy to think that there's so many other crimes that occur in Victoria during a normal time of the year that the police aren't that heavy-handed, and for something like this, they're going in, really hard.
You included in that montage the news reports of Eve Black's arrest, to her getting through the checkpoint into regional Victoria. Her video of that went viral, and there was a lot of online hate directed at her. That was would have been a couple of weeks ago now, but they eventually encountered her again, the Victoria Police in Carlton, and she refused to give their details, so they smashed her car window so they could arrest her. And what wasn't included in that montage is that Shane Patton, he bragged that that's what they were doing to arrest these so-called sovereign citizens, and that's certainly not something like it may need to be necessary, but to brag about it, that sends another chilling effect. That because, of course, that arrest footage might have been taken out of context, but the ordinary person sees that and thinks, "Yikes, that is way over the top," and they think the same about a car window getting smashed in.
Yeah, I mean, it's policing through fear. I think they've kind of lost control of. They've lost. It's hard to like. It's almost like they've lost the respect of the people. So they're trying to police through fear, because there's only so long that people can go on listening to information or directives from the government which are contradictory. So the only way that they can enforce these things is by fear, because people are beginning to question these things, and people are feeling like they are being put in a position where they should, assert their rights, or challenge the police sometimes, because the laws which are being put in place, or the directives which are being put in place, are directly impacting freedoms that we think we know that we should have, but they've been taken away from us right in front of us, and we have no control over how that's being enforced.
The so-called Freedom Rally that was planned outside Parliament last Sunday, the organisers of that were arrested in advance, which is a form of pre-crime, basically. And then on the day, they made about 7 arrests, handed out countless fines, and they ID checked everybody in the CBD to check that they were out for a lawful reason. Otherwise, they'd get, even if they had nothing to do with the protest, they'd get a $1,652 dollar fine. The fine for not wearing a mask without a lawful excuse is $200, and we've had the fines increased for breaching isolation orders to $4,957. And with all these threats that Andrews and Patton were communicating to healthy Victorians, it's been revealed with their shortcomings in contact tracing, where they had to start door knocking people, that they were completely incapable of making sure that actually people with the virus were self-isolating. And it said to me, hang on, you're you're threatening to fine us if we travel too far for groceries or exercise and that, but you're not actually making sure that people who have the virus are not spreading it. Isn't the most important thing?
Yeah, I mean, to the first point with the pre-crime arrest, the preemptive arrest of those Victorians, I mean, I think that's quite shameful that people who are engaging in, let's say, arresting them at the protests, you could justify that, but arresting people for the mere act of planning a protest or thinking about a protest, I think that's really going too far. So that really upset me. But back to the government again, where's the repercussions for them? Where's the fines for them? We get fined for everything. We can't, we can hardly go out of our front door at a certain time. We can't go out after 8 o'clock, we get fined. But with all the mistakes they're making and all the shortcomings of their contract tracing, all these systems that they have in place, when they're making these mistakes, there's no repercussions. So the community is always being, told off. We're always being scolded for the things that we're doing. And it's very easy for Daniel Andrews and Shane Patton to get up there and, tell off ordinary Victorians for the mistakes that we're making, or, for us protesting, whatever it is. It's easy for them to get up there and do that. But in return, there should be some accountability. So with the contact tracing, why haven't they put in the systems in place to make sure people are at home? Why aren't they calling them every second or whatever it is? If that is so crucial, if that is so vital, if that is so important, why are they not ensuring that people are at home? And, it's easy to find people walking on the street, but they're having a harder time keeping people in the house. So, and these are things that are under their control. It's not something that I can do. I can't go outside and monitor people in their houses. That's really the job of the government, and they're not doing those things effectively enough. Whereas we go outside and we do something wrong, we get fined, and there's no repercussions for them. So I really think there is a lot of serious questions there that need to be answered.
Oh, well, the Citizens Enforcement Brigade, that's what we refer to as Karens, who there are actually two types of Karens. There's the anti-mask Karens, and then there's the pro-mask Karens as well. They're basically the Citizens Patrol that you're referring to.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of done this thing where, we've made this general population into a police force against each other. Like, people are literally out there just policing each other. And there is really a lack of, understanding and empathy for certain people as well. So if you see someone without a mask, the first reaction that many people have is like, oh, they're doing something wrong. They're gonna, put our health in danger. And they could have a very valid reason for not having a mask. People are overreacting. And a lot of that is being driven by the language of the government. Daniel Andrews is up there, talking about Karen or someone from Brighton, whatever it is. And I think he should not be engaging with that kind of thing. He's got other issues that he should cover. And, we shouldn't be encouraging people to police each other. I think that's not on.
Karen from Brighton was not really a Karen. She was...
No, she wasn't.
Yeah,
no.
yeah. She just said that she was walking the tan because she'd done all of Brighton, which...
Yeah. I mean, that wasn't a big issue or big deal at all.
And she has actually started her own Instagram account where she's actually quite witty with some of the things that she comes up with. She bought a few cases from Dan Murphy's and said, these are the only cases I want from Dan.
That's a good one.
It's been very slow to get answers from Andrews, and there's still a long way to go in the accountability and scrutiny process. I know that the cult of Dan, as they've become known on Twitter, who just think that he can do no wrong, say, oh, he answers questions every day at his press conference. They go for an hour and a half, but does he answer them? I mean, it's as the saying goes, it's like pulling teeth out. It seems that he's just doing it to sort of say, oh, look, I am fronting up every day, even though he's not directly answering things. And to my way of thinking, if you're going to be like that, then just keep it to half an hour each day, and then get back to work and fix up the make sure the contact tracing and the aged care and healthcare facilities are secure. Because if you're a public leader, then what's the point in obfuscating for an hour every day?
Yeah, I mean, the press conferences, it's become almost meaningless because a lot of us want answers, in the sense that, there needs to be some sort of accountability. So I know Daniel Andrews thinks he's being accountable by saying that he's passed it off onto an inquiry, or saying that he's out here working for us, but that's really not what we're after. For me personally, if even if there was an admission or an apology or some sort of very clear answer in terms of, we knew this, this is why we didn't do it, or this is why we did it. Just a very basic answer. We can still have the inquiry later on to figure out all the nitty gritty, but just a very basic acknowledgement of something like that. It can put that to rest, because even the media that's there are focusing on that topic over and over, and all the public are getting is, the same loop, Daniel Andrews on a loop, every single day. And we really don't get anywhere in terms of how we can maybe prevent this going forward. Because what I worry about is that these things which have been done, let's say with hotel quarantine, if the public knows these things, maybe we can make sure that we avoid it during this time around. So the fact that he's not answering, and that he's shifted off into a hotel, the inquiry, it's just kind of created this mess, which it's really frustrating to watch every day. I watch all the press conferences, and it's quite frustrating to watch.
Yeah,
I'm at a point where it's like, it's pointless, because it's just going in a circle. And every day, I mean, some of the reporters these days, they have little bits of information, and I feel like we get more information from the reporters every day, which Dan just refuses to kind of just clear up, which would be so easy for him to do, but he just refuses to do it.
The cult of Dan, they attack these journalists at his daily press briefing, saying, "Oh, they ask the same question over and over again." Yeah, because he's not answering the question.
He's not answering it. That's right.
And if you're not getting a straight answer, you get the politician who you're ever questioning back on track. I mean, that's what I've got to do on my shows as well. And
yeah, I mean, I don't blame them. I don't blame the reporters. Like, it's great when they're doing that, because he shouldn't be up there just, taking it in a circle each time.
And, well, they've only recently started doing their job. I mean, up until the stage 4 lockdown, they were egging Dan on to go to stage 3, then stage 4, then the masks, demonizing the anti-maskers and virus deniers, really whipping up hatred to them. But as I said in my introduction, with the stage 4 restrictions taking full effect, it made people sit back, and was like a lot more people were having restrictions placed on their work or losing their jobs, and especially with the permitted worker scheme, which people rightly summarized as papers, please. It's not a simple bit of paper. It's 4 pages long. You've got to basically have like your work schedule on it. And what is it? Individuals are threatened with $20,000 fines if they're not filled out correctly, or it's close to $100,000 for businesses. And obviously, we see Shane Patton in that really dark suit. A lot of people have been pointing out that looks scarily similar to an SS uniform, and with the papers, please now, it makes those analogies not seem so far-fetched.
Yeah, I mean, the look is very draconian. I mean, I don't know whether that's by design. Again, I feel like they're trying to instill fear in people. I feel like they've come to a point where they think only through fear they can get us to comply, which is not the case. Majority of Victorians, almost 99% of Victorians, we're very compliant, and we listen to orders, and we want the best for our state. So the approach of being so heavy-handed in terms of the visuals of how they're presenting things, and I think it's just it's unnecessary, and it's causing a lot more distress than what's required.
And with the hotel quarantine breaches, which the science, the genomic sequencing proves that pretty much all of this second wave came from breaches and the hotel quarantine. We've gotten leaks through the media about some of the things that went wrong, such as, well, the most salacious is security guards having sex with those who are in quarantine, that the guards were hired through WhatsApp and Gumtree. The security guards were easily intimidated and capitulated to some of the more entitled return travellers who wanted to be let out into other rooms or for a smoke. I'm not sure if you remember some of those when mandatory quarantine was first introduced. It seemed to be these so-called Instagram influencers who would make these videos and say, "Oh, this is so awful. Breakfast was an hour late and the eggs were runny." Those were just the ones that these people, so self-absorbed and entitled, that they broadcast to the world. But there's probably a lot of others who were like that as well. And if you haven't got because to be a security guard, you should be as tough as nails, like not overbearing, but be able to stand firm. And it just doesn't seem like these security guards, based on what we've seen through the media, were up to the job.
Yeah, I mean, it's two points to that. Firstly, I don't blame the security guards to the extent that there should have been oversight. There should have been a body that oversaw this. You can't just expect people who have never dealt with this kind of thing to understand the ramifications, of this kind of thing getting out of control. So a lot of these security guards, they might have just taken it very lightly. And as a Victorian, I can't blame them as much as I blame the government, because they really had the job of oversight and making sure that these people that were put there to stop these guests mingling or doing these types of activities, that they actually did their job. But obviously that oversight wasn't provided. If people are being hired via WhatsApp by a subcontractors randomly, and they just show up and there's no mask provided to them or whatever it is, that's a real problem that goes more deeper than the security guard himself. Obviously, there needs to be accountability in terms of the way the personnel were acting and those companies and how they behaved. But we really have to take it back to who was responsible for the oversight. And that really is ultimately the government and the people that were in charge of the program.
One of the Department of Jobs statutory bodies, Global Victoria, was leaked to the Herald Sun earlier this week that they'd released an internal pat on the back video that they'd organised the hotel quarantine and made it an awesome experience for those return travellers. Let's have a look at a snippet of that.
I'm really pleased to say that we were able to really mobilise our staff who have extensive experience in stakeholder management and dealing with people with different backgrounds and running major events. And we've been thinking about this as a one massive inbound super trade mission, which just keeps rolling. And so it's been a really exciting project. I might do a shout out to the team who yesterday were driving and buying lots of boxes of dates. Today marks the first day of Ramadan, and so we wanted to make sure that those 250 people that we have quarantined can pay respect and do practice their religion with our support.
Welcome to logistics. Hey, these are delivery of toys about to go out to all the 15 different sites. Toys. Lots of toys for all the hotels.
Life is fairly busy at the moment. We are soon to finish the exit process of 212 people that have just completed their 14-day quarantine holiday experience.
An Easter release from isolation, treating these travellers to fresh air for the first time in 14 days. They were gifted treats from Cadbury and packed into taxis paid for by the Premier.
Now, seeing that in the situation where we're currently in at the moment, as of today, we've had. I'll just get the actual. 267 Victorians who've died from the coronavirus, and more will die in the coming days. To see that now, it just leaves you gobsmacked.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I just feel like they didn't take it seriously enough. It's such a big issue, big thing that's happening in our country, around the world. And to leave it in the hands of, a bunch of bureaucrats like that, when we should have brought in more expertise, we should have had, initial involvement maybe from the military, whatever. It's like something that is going to have a very impact on our society. And to see that, and to see the approach that was taken by these groups, it's disheartening, and especially with the situation that we're in today. I definitely feel that way.
When the state of disaster was declared on Sunday, the 2nd of August, that was when that week there was supposed to be a parliamentary sitting week because the Labor government has a majority in the Legislative Assembly. They cancelled the sitting based on the advice of the Chief Health Officer, Brett Sutton, but because the Legislative Council is not controlled by the government, they still sat. And that's also the house where Jenny Mikakos sits. She is a member for the Northern Metropolitan region. And for every question she was asked, she just said, "I'll get back to you with a written statement," which I've watched a lot of Question Times during my lifetime and following politics. I've never seen something like that before. The only time when a minister will give an answer like that if it's a really specific detail and they do need to get clarification from their department on that. For her to get up and say that for everything when she knows that this has been an area of concern where questions need to be answered, for her to go into that question time with nothing, that's basically like turning up to a presentation or handing in an essay with a blank sheet of paper.
Yeah, I mean, what's the point of having these people in leadership positions? What's the point of her being in having that portfolio if during the crunch time like this, she can't front up and she can't answer those questions? Like, what is really the point of having these people in leadership? What is the point of our government? Like, as citizens, as a member of the Victorian community, I expect answers. And just to see politicians up there just saying, "Oh, I can't answer that. I'll get back to you later." Where is the forum? Like, at what point will they communicate with us? 1 year from now, when everything is, hopefully back to normal, them giving us a report or some answers then doesn't cut it, especially during a time like this. We have sacrificed so much. We've put ourselves in such a situation where, we've stopped our normal lives for this pandemic. And then to have politicians up there saying that they can't answer questions, that they can't tell us what's going on, that they can't tell us why they're making these decisions for us, it's just not on. So, when I see that kind of thing, it's just very disappointing, and the whole system looks, corrupt, for lack of a better word.
Well, we did see Jenny Mikakos late Saturday night publish a Twitter thread, which was when a politician tweets late on a Saturday night that you question their mindset at that time. And there was a lot of incoherent self-pity there, where she said, "If my efforts weren't enough, I'm sorry," and then said stuff like the truth will come out in the inquiry, the truth will set you free. She referenced because she's Greek herself, the Greek origins of democracy. We know that a lot of the Greek aged care facilities in northern Melbourne have been hit with a number of deaths during the aged care outbreak. that was an even worse look to just do those tweets after that performance, and then when she eventually fronted up to a press conference on Monday, just said the tweets speak for themselves. I'm not going to be a commentator on myself.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll be, I'll be honest. Like, none of these politicians signed up for this pandemic. Like, it's caught everyone off guard. But having said that, this is what we expect from them, leadership. So if she can go home that night and rattle off a few tweets to explain herself and say the truth will set her free, or whatever she said, speak the truth when you have the opportunity. Speak the truth to the people. Speak to us. We want to know. We want to know what the truth is. And the more that they deny us that, the more that we're going to feel let down by them. And that's the pressure that she's feeling. The pressure that she's feeling is the fact that she knows that either, there's some information there that they haven't made privy, we're not privy to because of, the inquiry, but we should know that information as soon as possible. So I think her just at nighttime tweeting like that doesn't do any good for anyone.
Well, you mentioned that this is the judicial inquiry. Andrews and Makakos have used the cover of their judicial inquiry to dodge questions, to say that it's not a matter for me. It's a matter for the inquiry. Though, as we've heard from the chair of the judicial inquiry itself, which is, I'll just get her name right here.
Justice Coates.
Yeah, Justice Coates. She has said, no, we're not a court of law. There's nothing that will prevent ministers from answering questions now. So she removed that excuse dodge. Daniel Andrews, with the state of disaster, he extended the report date from September to November. Pushing out the reporting date is not going to make anyone forget about those hotel quarantine breaches, because we are living with the consequences every day. We don't want answers in 3 months. We want them now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that day when Justice Coates said that, I felt a sense of relief. I thought, oh, here we go. Maybe the media will now get onto this and ask some very serious questions, because prior to that, Dan Andrews had been dodging the question, and all the other politicians had been dodging the questions as well, saying, oh, we can't talk about it. We're not allowed to talk about it. And someone that understands these things, I knew that there was nothing stopping them from talking about it. So they had used that for so long. And then when she said that, no, they can actually speak about it if they want to, it turned into another circus by saying, oh, well, we could, but we don't want to interfere because I don't want them grading my own paper. Daniel Andrews keeps talking about people grading his own paper. We should be the people that are grading him. And so for that reason, he should be telling us these things. So I really think that the openness has to be there, and just delaying these things is just, it's not doing a service to anyone. If they just came out and just gave us some of these answers, I really feel that people would move on from it and learn from those mistakes and move on.
Yeah, this is the greatest gripe in the community at the moment, that there is just no not even a not an apology. Definitely, we haven't had that, but just not even a level of transparency, because there at least some transparency would be appreciated to know. And I know that this is what the media is asking as well, on the data, where the infections and outbreaks are coming from, because the people need to understand, okay, where is it happening, so they can be kept into the loop, so they have an understanding of what needs to be done as well, because the ordinary Victorians, they know better than to just swallow a government saying, "Oh, just trust us."
Yeah, I mean, that's the lack of transparency, especially around data, and around modeling. This insistence that people, don't understand that the common person doesn't need to see these things, and the only version that we need to see is, the version that they feed through the media. I think that's a mistake, because people are a lot smarter than they think. People go looking for information elsewhere, and that's why you're having a lot of this confusion, because with the lack of data, with the lack of transparency, you're having a lot more people on social media or on other parts of the internet reaching out and looking for information. And you have these networks of people just sharing information through WhatsApp or whatever it is. And that's when you have these issues with misinformation. So them not providing the data, providing those numbers, providing, where these things are happening, the postcodes or whatever it is, or the demographics, or the cultural groups, or the building, or whatever it is, them not providing that information, especially at the start of the pandemic, was a real issue. And I think that kind of led to it growing more, because people really didn't know where it was happening. That the systems weren't put in place. And I think that'd be really simple for them to do that.
We did get some updated polling from the Victorian public about the current state of the lockdown. This is from Essential Media, published on The Guardian. 72% of the sample backed the curfew, 71% backed the curbs on leaving the home, while 70% endorsed restrictions on business and the 5-kilometre radius. Voters aged over 34 more likely to support the current lockdown measures. 79% of people have a good understanding of what they're permitted and are not permitted to do. But it also says down further here that the approval of the Andrews government has gone down from 75% back in June down to 49%, which indicates that the Victorian people for now are basically sucking it up, the current restrictions, because, well, they've been told that there is no other way out of the current case numbers and deaths without these lockdown. But their faith in Andrews to do the job is diminishing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, personally, I feel there's no choice, and we put up with these things, because there is no avenue for us to do anything different without getting fined or arrested or whatever it is. So we put up with it. But internally, going forward, a lot more people are becoming more critical of government. I'm not just saying Andrew's government, just government in general. People are kind of getting to a point where they've realized that in this type of situation, the leadership is really not there. So I think that's what you're finding. People are happy to put up with it because there's no choice. But at the same time, people are waking up to the fact that in these kind of situations, the government is ultimately, can become almost useless if they don't provide adequate transparency that we require.
And what really sunk a lot of the public faith in the Andrews government, and also that restrictions were being applied across the board, was the basic green light to the Black Lives Matter rallies in Melbourne in early June, which also led to knock-on rallies about refugee rights and Extinction Rebellion. All Daniel Andrews and the Police Minister Lisa Neville said that, there are too many people there for us to sufficiently police it. Just don't go. They basically winked and said, yeah, we support the cause, we're on your side, but don't go. We know that there were 6 positive cases who attended that rally because contact tracing at that time was so poor. We don't know whether they contracted it there and that, but 2 lived in those public housing towers, which 9 of which had to go into what do you call a level 5 lockdown. They weren't allowed to leave their apartments for any reason. It was quite extraordinary that people were prevented from leaving at all. They basically had to have rations provided to them. And It was just the three organisers of the Black Lives Matter rallies who were fined. But before that, we saw, well, the Mother's Day anti-lockdown protests. The speakers were dragged off the stage and arrested. There was another anti-lockdown rally later in May. That was also had a heavy police presence, and the police barked at the attendees to social distance. And yeah, we're seeing now the pre-crime arrest now for those who are even thinking about protesting. So that double standard, it was crystal clear at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I felt it. I felt it as a business owner. I felt it as just a Victorian, because, you know, I had sacrificed so much, I had given up so much, and I had complied and listened. You know, I had done the right things, and, you know, I was very respectful of everything the government was telling me to do as a business owner and as a Victorian. But then to see him up there, to see Daniel Andrews and the police people up there say, you know, hey, you know, there's nothing we can do. You know, we can't enforce this. You know, don't go, but, you know, there's nothing we can do. We're not going to fine anyone. We're not going to do anything. And that really just gave a green light for those kind of things to go ahead. And within the community, I know this personally, because a lot of the people I was talking to, people were just, you know, outraged, because they were like, oh, well, if you can have 10,000 people marching down the street of Melbourne, why can't we have, you know, a wedding? Why can't I go see my family? Why can't I attend a funeral? Why can't I do these things? And it's just human nature. You know, people feel when they see that visual of 10,000 people marching in the streets of Melbourne and Daniel Andrews saying, oh, I can't do anything about it, it just makes it look like he's not taking it very seriously. And that generally, I think, led to a very, you know, very large shift in the community in terms of how they're going to comply going forward. And that's just created a mess where now the police have to go into more, you know, extreme measures to make sure people comply, because there is that feeling within the community that there is two standards. And, you know, why didn't the Andrews government, the police, go arrest the organisers for the Black Lives Matter protest before they even planned the protest, you know, attended the protest? Why couldn't that happen? Because we know now that they're doing these kind of things, you know, so people have a right to be outraged by that double standard, definitely.
It was titled a Black Lives Matter rally. I'm not sure if brown lives were included. Did the local Sri Lankan community in Melbourne get an invite?
No, not an invite like that. Obviously, there would have been Sri Lankans that attended that believe in these types of things. But yeah, generally, we participate in the community in a different way.
You've also done your own commentary video on Black Lives Matter, where you talk about you were born in Sri Lanka, but you spent the majority of your life in Australia, and well, not just through the Black Lives Matter activists, but a lot of the left-leaning media tells us that Australia is an inherently racist country, which you say in your video that's not your experience.
No, definitely it's not my experience. You know, when my parents are immigrating here, when immigrants come here, let's say from Sri Lanka, my parents aren't coming here because, you know, it's a racist country. We come here because we see, you know, opportunity, and we see a country where we can progress and be a part of the community. You know, the type of racism that's being discussed in the media, you know, this culture of, you know, everyone's a victim, you know, I should be a victim. No, I don't feel like that at all. This country's given me so many opportunities, and it's given so many of my other fellow countrymen who are here from Sri Lanka or from South Asia so many opportunities. And, you know, we don't approach these things from the angle of racism. You know, we don't feel it the way that the media is telling us that we should feel that, you know, as the victim, that we should be a victim. We don't feel like that at all. So, you know, that's kind of what I was discussing in the video that I did, that, you know, we're here by our own free will in Australia, and we're not here because it's a racist country. We're here because we know that there's a great opportunity for us to contribute to the society and also get ahead in life ourselves.
And you had a good livelihood until, well, the government forced its end.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm someone that's always worked for myself. I've always worked hard, and, you know, I don't believe in, you know, even now, like, it's hard for someone like me who's worked his whole life to turn to the government for help. I'm only, even if I'm doing that, it's only because I have no other choice. They've literally destroyed businesses, and I'm not blaming them in the sense that they did it on purpose. I understand why all this has occurred, but it's important that there's a respect for people who are in business, who are people who work hard and that want to work. That we're given that opportunity in a way that it's not taken away from us over and over each time that the government wants to save face.
Yeah, because we're in this position now. Is this going to be the lockdown to end all lockdowns?
Yeah.
There are. It's been discussed in some of the media, other approaches that other jurisdictions have had. Sweden took the approach of not shutting anything down, but making sure that the sick, vulnerable, and elderly were quarantined. They initially had a high death rate, but that has consistently gone down. The goal is to reach what's known as herd immunity. New York and Italy, which we referenced, they had those a parade of coffins when they were heavily hit back in March, because the virus has, in a sense, run its course, albeit with so much devastation. They are recovering now. New York is opening up, Italy is opening up, and their curve is still flat. And well, we've seen New Zealand thought they'd eliminated the virus, but it's back. They don't know how. Western Australia, they look to have eliminated the virus, but that's only going to hold up as long as they keep their state border open. And we see a bit more sort of confidence that there's going to be from the medical profession and the media that there is going to be a vaccine soon, but we have no idea what it would look like if it was administered to how many people, whether that would be enough to give governments confidence to lift the lockdowns.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a job here for government to manage the community expectations. We can't have a situation where, we're told that the only option is complete elimination, because it just looks like that's not going to happen. So we really have to, shift the goalposts. And this is something that governments are usually very good at doing, shifting goalposts. So, I'd feel like that, either the federal government or even the state government really have to have a message that, it's okay if there's 100 cases in the community at any given point. It's okay if there's 10 to 20 people in the hospital. Like, we can manage those things, and that message is not really being out there in the public at the moment. The message right now is that even one case is devastating for everyone, and we can see from around the world that that's really not how it's working out, because like you said, in Sweden and in parts of the world where the virus has run its course, things are kind of stabilizing. And if we do manage to protect our vulnerable, protect the people in nursing homes, protect the people with who are immunocompromised, can we return to a society where we can deal with having 100, 200 cases? Those are the discussions that need to be had in public. But at the moment, I feel like those type of discussions are being pushed to the sidelines in favor of getting to a situation where there's 0 cases. I mean, the strategy is the suppression strategy, but I feel like in the media, the way that the media portrays it, it really is, we have to have 0 cases for things to go back to normal, and that's just not realistic anymore.
And that's not to diminish the people who have died from coronavirus, but
yeah, I mean, it's devastating.
We shouldn't have this single coronavirus mindset where those are the only deaths we need to prevent and contain, because we are thankfully seeing a bit more attention given to now. There's been some youth suicides due to the lockdown reported, and was it a 33% increase in young people presenting to hospitals with self-harm. And there's also the family violence and child abuse can increase with these lockdowns as well. There's other considerations as well, other tragedies are going to be exacerbated.
Yeah, I mean, the death of Victorians every day due to coronavirus is devastating. It's disheartening. I have parents that have pre-existing conditions, and they are vulnerable, and it's something that I worry about as well. So definitely, the deaths due to coronavirus is something that we should all be concerned about. But like you said, we shouldn't forget about the wide-ranging impacts of such a pandemic, which is the cost on on mental health. And I can definitely see people having mental breakdowns, because sometimes, especially being a business owner, you feel hopeless. You feel helpless. You don't know where to turn to. You don't know what's happening next. And this is something that so many people are going through at many different levels. So the ongoing cost of this, I think we have yet to comprehend. At least 3, 4, 5 years from now, we'll still be dealing with the consequences of this pandemic, and the consequences that have been caused by lockdown.
The Mental Health Minister, Martin Foley, on Sunday announced a $60 million boost to mental health in Victoria, but this is not a mental health crisis. Is something you can't just throw money at and is going to fix. I mean, it's the lockdown themselves which are leading to it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there is a place for that kind of funding, and there's a place for those services where you can call up and talk to someone, or you can get that kind of assistance that you need, and definitely the value services within the community. But really, the thing that had the most kind of impact in terms of helping people is, clear, concise pathway out of. And I think the lack of that is what's really causing the distress. There is no light at the end of the tunnel for many people when they look at the situation, and that's really causing a lot of the mental issues, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's going to be an uncertain and tough road still. I've appreciated you, Rukshan, for coming on my show tonight, especially at such short notice. I only asked you this morning, and I would encourage everyone to check out your Facebook page and YouTube channel, Real Rukshan, for your video vlogs and also compilation videos as well. Obviously, with the industry that you're in, you've got a lot of spare time, so we know that you've still got a lot of creativity in you.
All right, thanks for having me on, Tim. And you're right, I do have a lot of spare time, and just trying to keep myself busy as well. And I think it's important that all of us, as citizens of Australia and as a part of the community in Victoria, really engages with our leaders and engages with our government in whichever way that's possible for each of us to do. Because at the end of the day, I feel like it's up to us, it's up to the people to really kind of be out there voicing our concerns. And I thank you again, team, for giving me this platform today to talk to you.
Yeah, you're definitely right in that. The people, obviously, virtually need to make their concerns and views heard now more than ever.
Thanks, Tim.
Take care.
Take care.
All right, that concludes my interview with Rukshan there. Now, although it hasn't been promoted in the episode description, I have got a second guest featured interview lined up. You would have heard, you would have heard yesterday about Network 10. They are going through their second round of cutbacks, which include axing, in my opinion, probably their biggest network star, Kerry-Ann Kenley. She of course was known during those hot topic segments on Studio 10 for saying what most people do think, but don't often say when it came to Indigenous welfare and Extinction Rebellion. The coronavirus pandemic has fast-tracked a lot of major cutbacks and redundancies at mainstream media outlets. This is despite their desperation to gain clicks and eyeballs with scary and sensationalized coronavirus lockdown news. This hasn't stopped their revenue collapsing. So Network 10, back in May, they axed their 10 daily news site. With these latest cutbacks, not only is it Studio 10 affected, but all of their news bulletins are going to be broadcast from Sydney and Melbourne. So those that you see in Brisbane, Adelaide and Perth, they'll all be coming out of Sydney and Melbourne. So to help us analyse the mainstream media retractions in 2020 is Graham Young, editor of Online Opinion and director of the Brisbane-based Australian Institute for Progress. He was a featured guest back on WilmsFront in May to discuss the Queensland political landscape with their pending October 31st state election. I caught up to chat with Graham about the Network 10 cutbacks and the general mainstream media reductions a short time ago.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by theunshackled.net.
Graham, welcome back to the show.
Great to be with you again, Tim.
Now, we thought after the first wave of the coronavirus that mainstream media, they'd done all the cutbacks that they could justify. But Network 10 yesterday, they announced further redundancies, including their big names at Studio 10, Kerry-Ann Kenley, Natasha Belling and Tim Bailey. The project remained unscathed, which I know myself and a lot of others were quite upset about. Network 10, it's always been the number 3 commercial network. It's always had the aim of being number 1 in the 16 to 39 demographics, and it is a commercial TV network, so it still does have that free-to-air terrestrial reach. But this also follows the closure of their 10 daily news and lifestyle website on May 22. So what is happening at 10?
Well, you mentioned COVID. I don't think it's really got that much to do with COVID. I think there's a few businesses around using COVID as an excuse to revamp and change and try and make things more profitable. But basically, for the last 20 or so years, we've had a slow rolling avalanche, which is being the migration of advertising from broadcast medium to more targeted media. Organisations like Google have hoovered up most of the advertising budget, or certainly, I'd say most of the advertising budget, and they now feed it up to people over any platform. And they feed it up to people on the basis of what people are likely to be interested in, which is an annoying thing, that they're not really that good at guessing whether you're interested. Sometimes they'll know that you've looked at a website which offers a particular sort of product, and then they'll follow you around, pestering you because they think you might be interested in buying that. They don't know if you've actually bought and satisfied that need or not, but it's still a more efficient way of getting to people than putting something on TV, where it's a bit haphazard as to who's watching it and whether they retain it, and where you've got to spend huge budgets repeating the same message over and over again to get to people. So television has depended on those advertising, entirely on those advertising dollars to keep going, and they've been migrating away now for 20 years. And the upshot of that is that TV stations have had to pare back. They've had to work out how to produce content at little cost. And that means that they've been skewing much more towards entertainment than they were previously. And the news components have been gradually being either eliminated or turned into entertainment themselves.
Now, we heard recently Federal Treasurer Josh Frydenberg announce that the ACCC was at first going to oversee a voluntary mediation between the tech giants Google and Facebook and the mainstream commercial media outlets about getting a fee for the content being posted on their platforms. And I know that this has been a gripe of the mainstream media organizations for a while. What is do you think that this is just that? Because what it is basically is when links are shared on Facebook, that's what they want. They basically want a cut of Facebook users sharing their links in groups or wherever.
Yeah, well, you won't read about it in the mainstream media because, you know, what I was saying before about that avalanche of advertising leaving them and going to Google means that they're struggling for revenue. No, it'd be like them charging the newsagent for putting up a display advertising their product. You know, when you look at how the media organises their websites, they spend a lot of time trying to do what's called search engine optimization. They want those search engines to send people to them. And the way that the search engines send people to them is that they have snippets from the newspaper, which presents their articles in a way, and the newspapers and the broadcasters, etc., the news or media organisations, they participate in this. They set up their content so it will display on the search engines with nice images and so on, and be attractive, and hopefully people will click through. So you can't expect an organisation to do that for nothing, and Facebook and Google sell their own advertisements, etc., and that's how they make an earning from it. But they provide that platform. They can't produce their own material, so they're using material which is effectively gifted to them by the news organisations on the basis, and the quid pro quo is, we'll then send the traffic back to you. That's what a search engine does. The real problem here is that 20 years ago, newspapers and other media organisations decided they'd give their material away for nothing on the web. If they were charging for it, they wouldn't have this issue. But they're not charging for it. They haven't had enough confidence in the product that it has sufficient value, and possibly it doesn't have sufficient value for people to want to pay for it. Well, that's a basic problem for the content provider, and they shouldn't be going for the effectively commission agent, which is what the search engines are, and saying, well, we've made a mistake, so you've got to give us some of your commission. You know, it shouldn't work like that at all. And I'm quite disgusted, I think is the word, with the federal government for effectively being complicit in trying to solve what's a commercial problem for the media organisations, and to solve it by penalising the search engines and the social media.
If we turn back the clock 30 years ago, that was still the golden age of television, radio, and newspapers, because all the classifieds went into the papers. It was described as the rivers of gold, and of course, the major brands, if they wanted to get their name out there, they advertised on television and radio and a few print advertisements as well. So it's been huge disruption there, but also, well, newspapers at least, they charged for buying the newspaper. Back then, it was, it might have been less than $1 for a copy of the Herald Sun or the Daily Telegraph or the Age Sydney Morning Herald. Obviously, the prices of the daily newspaper, particularly the broadsheets, have gone up again, but people still paid for them, whether by the day or through a subscription. But we're certainly seeing, as you said, they made the mistake of giving it away online for free. But there's now also this sense of entitlement from the consumer that most of them are not going to pay for news. For example, going back to links shared on Facebook, if there's a link to a paywalled story, people just be like, I'm not going to pay for it, or they'll try to get a workaround from it. So there's a complete shift in there. There seems to be still a firm resistance from the consumer that they shouldn't have to pay for, or what they see as clickbait stories. They don't see that it's worth paying for.
Well, and that's a problem for the news organisations, which means they've got to find ways of providing higher quality material. There are things that people will pay money for. There's two sorts of things. One is pornography, believe it or not, because even though there's a lot around you can get free, they still manage to make money out of selling subscriptions to porn sites. And the other is financial tip sheets. So there's a number of organisations out there that, Motley Fool's one of them, for example, which make money out of publishing subscription financial advice services. Alan Kohler, for example, he got into that business and he sold his first business to News Corp for, I think, $12 million. Or it might have been 20 million, and he got 12 out of it, something like that, but quite a substantial amount of money. The Wall Street Journal is a paywalled publication. It's been paywalled, I think, from the very beginning, and it manages to make money. I'm quite happy to pay for my subscription to the Fin Review, the Australian, and I kind of get the Courier Mail in there. You're in Queensland, you sort of got to pay attention to your local state. And I think you'll find there'll be a lot of people like me, or an increasing number of people, I should probably say, who will grudgingly stump up money for some of the higher quality publications. But, you know, other organisations like Fairfax seem to me to be going down the clickbait route, and I think, you know, they should suffer the consequences, because that is not valuable material and people will not pay you for it, and therefore you're going to go broke. And, you know, Channel 10 is more in the discretionary end of broadcasting. You know, it's not a broadcaster that most of us would notice if they weren't there. You know, I don't watch the stuff that appeals to the older age bracket, and I've watched The Project a few times, and there's definitely a knowledge deficit there at the very least.
Though we do see this paywall paradox in that people are now prepared to pay for on-demand ad-free streaming services such as Netflix, Stan, and now Disney Plus, where going to traditional television, that was always free, and you could, if you wanted something on demand, you could tape it off the TV in a VHS. But it's interesting, there's been that shift. Like in my own life, I'm prepared to pay for Netflix and Stan and Disney Plus for the on demand content. They're both media products, news and streaming services, yet there's a lot more willingness to pay for the streaming services.
Yeah, well, I think most of us are probably paying for streaming services now anyway, because increasingly television is delivered via the internet. You can still get it free to air, but I'm not sure, as in using the old analog
bunny ears.
Yeah, bunny ears. But I think, you know, most people now are getting it through the NBN, etc. And it generally comes bundled with some sort of a subscription service that does your internet and gives you access to Foxtel, Netflix, etc. So, you know, I think that's where the media organisations are going. And organisations like Channel 10 are kind of outside that at the moment. I'm a bit vague actually on the overall ownership.
Viacom CBS is the overall owner of Network 10.
Yeah, that's right. So they're probably hooked into that. But in terms of domestic market. Channel 10 isn't really. So that's a problem for them. So we're moving to a different sort of media organisation, and that's a good thing. We didn't always have these large broadsheet newspapers with the classified advertising. That's something that developed over probably 100 years. I mean, the original newspapers were much more like blog sites. The original news organisation was what was the name of it? Anyway, they made their money by sending agents to watch what ships were leaving. Reuters was the first serious news organisation, and it made its money by sending agents overseas, monitoring what ships were going out of port and what cargoes they had, transferring that valuable financial information back to merchants in England faster than anyone else was, and people could make real money out of it. So that's where the serious news started. Reuters, as we know, morphed into this very large media organisation selling syndicated content effectively now. But that's not where it started, and that's not where it's going to end. And we shouldn't expect things to stay stationary and static. And I guess getting back to the federal government, that's one of the bad things that they're doing here, that they're discouraging innovation. You mentioned COVID. If we're going to come out of COVID well, I think we have to build an economy that is more innovative than the previous one was, not less innovative. And yet here you've got the federal government trying to prop up legacy news proprietors by swiping money off one of the true innovators. Now, I've got problems with Google. And Facebook. They play ducks and drakes with not with advertising, but with the searches to a certain extent when it comes to politics. There's a definite skew there, but they shouldn't be being penalised because they've got a more successful model than the legacy operators. We should be setting up a situation where the legacy operators are encouraged themselves to be more innovative. If Fairfax had set up realestate.com.au, which they could have, they'd be prospering. But they didn't. They thought everyone will have to come and read our newspapers anyway. And if we go in this direction, it'll cannibalise our existing business model and we'll lose money. It won't be as large as we are now. Well, they're not as large as they were then. But realestate.com.au, it's diversifying all over the globe, and it may well end up being larger than the original body that it effectively cannibalised. So, there's lessons there for all of us that you can't afford to stand still. You've got to have a product that people want to buy, and you've got to have confidence they want to buy it. And governments shouldn't be there trying to hold back the new entrants in favour of the old entrants. It's not the way forward, and it's not the way out of COVID.
We haven't mentioned the magazine closures yet. Bauer Media, which I think 7 and 9, which used to own a lot of Australia's most prestigious magazines, they correctly offloaded those assets, but Bauer Media have closed 8 titles, and I'm surprised that it took them this long to close those, given that if newspapers are finding they're hard for people to buy, then those glossy magazines, which are printed on in colour and also on thick paper. But what probably most concerns people about printing closures is the regional paper closures. There was News Corp. They announced that they were closing 112 of their regional titles from printing. 76 were going to online only, and so there's this concern about the disappearing local news. And then there was also, at the end of last year, 7 Network cut their regional Today Tonight bulletins in Perth and Adelaide. And given, as you know, I'm from Melbourne, there's been a lot of commentary that the local Melbourne media here is now too weak, and that's why Daniel Andrews has escaped scrutiny for so long up until now. we still have radio seems to be doing well. 3AW has been quite critical and scrutinising Andrews. But what do you say to that argument that the closure of these regional news outlets allows state governments and also local governments to escape scrutiny until there's a major crisis?
Well, that's been going on for quite a long time now. And look, I mourn the passing of the television current affairs programs more than anything else. What they had was the ability to put politicians under pressure, so you could actually see them reacting to a proposition. The print media doesn't really do that, and never really has. The way the print media operates is via research, inside stories, scoops, that sort of thing, blowing it up on the front page. But they've got to manufacture the news, whereas broadcast media, which is live, where you're interviewing a politician, they can often manufacture the news themselves by the way they answer a question or what they say. And it's immediate. You know, you don't have to spend days or weeks trying to ferret something out. You can actually put a politician on the spot and get a response. And I think that, yeah, there's some truth that the governments aren't being held to account because of the lack of that. But look, you know, I remember the days of Joh Bjelke-Petersen up here in Queensland, and the National Party had a headlock on government for 27 years, I think it was.
32 years total,
22,
National
yeah,
Party.
1957, yeah, through to, geez, you're better at it than I am, and I lived through it. So, you know, we had all those paraphernalia back in that time. Joe used to refer to interviews as feeding the chooks. You know, I don't know there was any more accountability, even though there was more news. So I don't quite buy that. You know, I think news has got news, as in News Corp, has got a problem in those regional areas if it thinks that it's going to make a living off internet-only publications that are free to read. They'll only manage to do it if they're subscription services. So I know up here in Queensland, there's a number of local newspapers that are actually kind of part of the Courier Mail these days. So you read the Courier and you'll have something from Redlands, which will be co-branded with the local portal, which it effectively is down there, not a newspaper. And the same thing up Caboolture, for example. Yeah, if they can't charge people for that, that'll be a problem. But look, we're in a new world where we don't print so much stuff out. So people are reading online, and they are getting their news. You know, maybe they're getting it less formally now than they were. And that is a problem for management, because misinformation and partial information get passed around. But I think at the end of the day, holding politicians to account, that's really done by other politicians. And, you know, I think our politicians have got a long way to go in being smart about how they run their online media. And I think there's probably room there for kind of in-house media, that the political parties themselves should be doing a lot more and spending a lot more time effectively building media organisations that can then get shared around on Facebook and Instagram and all those other social media platforms. So there's a need there. We'll work out how to meet the need. We haven't worked out how to do that particularly well at the moment, but I think we're getting there. You know, I think you have to have faith in human progress. We've come a long way. We've come a long way from the original shit sheets, if you like, of Grub Street in the early days of publishing, when, you know, the term grub was coined basically because all the newspapers came out of Grub Street, and there was the grubbiness of the media. Well, in a sense, nothing much has changed. We've innovated, we've changed over a couple of 100 years to where we are now. in 100 years' time, you're kidding yourself if you think the media is going to look like what it does now. But you're also kidding yourself if you think that it won't bear some sort of family resemblance to it.
Well, you're absolutely right with the point with the current COVID catastrophes, both at the state and federal level, that the political class themselves aren't doing the best job at holding each other to account. But that's a whole other topic which we might get into a future show. You're around about 2.5 months now from the Queensland state election, which that'll be one of the first border elections. But we might check in with you again later in the campaign trail to get more of an update on that.
Okay, that'd be great, Tim. Look forward to it. Might have some polling for you by then too.
Okay, excellent. Because can't get enough polling, even though they might be wrong. We just love them.
Well, I do qualitative polling, so it's never wrong. It just doesn't predict election results, but it tells you what people are thinking, and that's really the most important, interesting thing about election analysis. And it's something I've been doing for 20 years. It's kind of data journalism. It's a sophisticated form of the vox pop, if you like, but a lot of journalism isn't worth buying, because really all that happens is journalists talk to other journalists, they live in a bubble, they recycle what they all think, and the public looks at it and they don't recognise it. So what I started doing 20 years ago was building up a panel of people in the community, some of whom I agree with, but most of whom I don't, who fill in questionnaires for me, and they tell me in their own words what they're thinking. I distill that out, and that gives me a much better view of what's going on than I think you'll find in most media outlets.
Like an insiders panel.
Well, an insider. It's a complete waste of time. You're talking to people who only talk to people who are trying to generally manipulate them. They're the real insiders, the people internally in the political parties who feed out morsels of information, generally only partial morsels of information. They get these people on a string. They then go on new so-called news programs, and they then retail what the wholesalers and the political organisations have given them. And it's not news. It's propaganda, basically.
Well, it's what's termed the political media industrial complex. If people want to see your better, more raw work, they can go to your website, onlineopinion.com. Has it got the AU at the end?
.com.au, yeah. Yep. .com.au.
And also your research at aop.asn.au, and also you write for the spectator.com.au, which does have a paywall. I'm not sure if you have any inside knowledge about how well that's working.
Well, they pay me a little bit, so it must be working a bit at least.
Yeah. Oh well, then I'd say that it does seem to be working then.
But I think journalism, something that came out of the migration of the rivers of gold, as you put it, was that a lot of the serious journalism, even back in the heyday, was actually a product of philanthropy. And the philanthropy was from the advertising department, which was making all the money, to the news department, which was spending it. So I think the Spectator probably has a bit of philanthropy behind it, just as the Australian has had with...
And also the Saturday paper and the Guardian.
Yeah. So there is a long-standing model there where a lot of news organisations haven't actually made enough money to pay all the bills, but someone has stepped in who said, no, this is worth doing. I see Gina Reinhardt advertising a lot on Sky News and think maybe she's fulfilling that role with Sky to a certain extent, because I'm not sure that Gina really needs to advertise to the public to make her business run.
All right, take care, Graham. Thanks again for joining the show.
Always a pleasure, Tim. See you.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by theunshackled.net.
And that concludes the two featured guests for tonight. But before finishing, I couldn't end the show without commenting on the latest development in the US presidential election. Joe Biden has finally announced his running mate. He is a vice presidential nominee for the November election. He did indicate that it was going to be a woman of color, and he has delivered. He has chosen US Democrat Californian Senator Kamala Harris, whose own presidential campaign spectacularly ended at the end of last year in 2019. She's a former prosecutor and attorney general of California. A lot of people have referred to her as a cop, given the amount of nonviolent offenders she locked up during her time. And so the meme has been, so the Democrats, the party of Black Lives Matter and Antifa, have got an old white man and a cop on their presidential ticket. Now, Kamala Harris, she doesn't have the best, I would say, a reading of criminal acts, because she believed that Jesse Smollett was attacked by two MAGA-wearing white guys. She called it a modern-day lynching. During the primary, she also criticized Biden's associations with segregationist Democrats in the past, and also said that she believed the women who said that Joe Biden made them feel uncomfortable when he was quite touchy-feely with them. I don't think she said anything about Tara Reid, the former congressional aide who accused him of basically sexual assault. Though the reason why her pick as Biden's vice president is so significant is because if Biden wins the presidency, then she'll be in a heartbeat, or more accurately, a brain cell away from the presidency. Given that Biden, his cognitive abilities are just getting worse and worse, he'll either, well, if he doesn't die in office, he'll be incapacitated, and the 25th Amendment will need to be invoked. But I'll have more to say about that and other recent developments on the Uncockables tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. Melbourne time, on the show's YouTube and DLive channel. Then on Friday, well, given that Dewey is back under house arrest in Auckland, we'll be doing Trad Tasman Talk, 6 p.m. Melbourne time, on the Unshackled YouTube channel, because obviously he is prevented from being out and about campaigning now, and there's even talk with the new cases in New Zealand that the election might be postponed from its scheduled date of Saturday, 19th of September. So we'll ask Dewey where New Zealand is at by the end of this week. Apparently the lockdowns are only supposed to be temporary until Friday night, but we'll see how that plays out. Thank you everyone for watching. As always, WilmsFront will be back again next week, possibly Monday, but definitely Wednesday and maybe Friday as well. But always stay tuned to either my Telegram, Parler, Gab, or Minds account, where I keep you, the audience, updated about and notified about when the upcoming show is. So thank you everyone for watching. Have a good night. Please stay safe and stay sane.
Thanks for tuning in to WilmsFront. Visit timwilms.com or Rational Rise TV to view the archive of episodes. And keep visiting theunshackled.net to view all our shows, and to keep up with the latest real news and analysis.